Remember the moment you first suspected something was wrong, that fleeting thought that made your stomach tighten before you quickly dismissed it? The question that formed in your mind that seemed too dangerous to ask out loud, that wasn't paranoia. It wasn't overthinking. It was your last authentic thought before they drowned it out with noise and distraction. This isn't about conspiracy. It's about you, right now, living in a cage you've been taught to call freedom. It's about the life you're not living while you're busy existing. You think you're awake, you're not. The greatest deception isn't that they lie to you. It's simpler and more devastating than that. The greatest deception is that you've been programmed to lie to yourself every time you say, "That's just how things are." Every time you lower your expectations. Every time you swallow your objections, every time you defer your dreams for someday. They didn't need to silence you. They just needed you to silence yourself. We accept the unacceptable daily. We normalize the obscene. We call outrages inconveniences. We treat systematic failures as personal shortcomings. We call it life. We call it normal. We call it inevitable. We call it being realistic. It's none of these things. You stare at screens that harvest your attention while your life passes unlived. You chase money that's designed to evaporate before you earn it. You follow rules written by those who would never follow them themselves. You pursue goals implanted in your mind by advertisers and algorithms. The false promise is maddeningly simple. Conform and you'll be safe. Follow the path and you'll find fulfillment. Play by the rules and you'll be rewarded. The bitter truth. Your safety was never the priority. Your fulfillment was never the goal. Your reward was never the point. You trade freedom for the illusion of security. You surrender time for the promise of comfort. You exchange authenticity for acceptance. You sacrifice presence for the mirage of future satisfaction. And what do you get in return? A life half-lived, dreams deferred until they die. Relationships mediated through screens. A society that treats your most human qualities as inefficiencies to be corrected. They didn't need to lock the door. They just convinced you there was nowhere worth going. They didn't need to restrain you. They just made the cage comfortable enough that you stopped testing its boundaries, and now you defend that cage against those who would free you from it. Look closely at who profits from your distraction. Follow the trail of your depleted energy. Track where your surrendered time ultimately flows. The power structures aren't hidden behind closed doors. They're obvious, hiding in plain sight behind pleasant-sounding terms like optimization and engagement and productivity and growth. They've commodified your attention, quantified your worth, and convinced you that your value depends on your economic output. They've reframed human connection as networking, and passion as side hustle, and rest as unproductive. Have you noticed the pattern? They shout the loudest and know the least. They demand your trust while betraying it systematically. They preach sacrifice while hoarding resources. They celebrate individuality while enforcing conformity. They promise freedom through systems of control. The architects of this illusion aren't mysterious figures in shadows. They're the systems we've allowed to run on autopilot, the incentives we've failed to question, the authorities we've stopped challenging, the assumptions we've ceased examining, the power we've forgotten. We possess, they didn't steal your power. You surrendered it, one small decision at a time, one objection not raised, one boundary not enforced, one truth not spoken. Consider this. The average person will spend 34.7 years staring at screens in their lifetime. That's not living. That's watching life from behind glass. That's experiencing existence through a mediator that distorts everything it touches. A single tech company has more data points on your behavior than the most sophisticated psychological study in history. They know when you're depressed before you do. They track your eye movements, your hesitations, your impulses. They know your patterns better than you know yourself. And perhaps most disturbing, 67% of people would rather administer mild electric shocks to themselves than sit alone with their thoughts for 15 minutes. We've become strangers to ourselves, and we've done it voluntarily. Technology promised connection, it promised convenience, it promised information, it promised freedom. Instead, it delivered isolation, crafted to look like community. Addiction disguised as convenience. Propaganda, masked as information. Surveillance sold as security. Your device isn't a tool, it's a delivery mechanism, precisely engineered to keep you consuming, scrolling, liking, envying, fearing, reacting, but never truly thinking, never deeply connecting, never fully present. The average person checks their phone 96 times daily, once every 10 minutes of waking life, not because they need to, because they've been conditioned to. Each notification triggers a dopamine hit. Each like validates your existence. Each scroll promises the satisfaction that never comes. Each headline triggers the outrage that keeps you engaged. Each update nurtures the fear that you're missing something essential. These aren't accidents. They aren't bugs. They're deliberate design features. Feel that phantom vibration in your pocket right now. The mild anxiety when your battery hits 20%, the subtle relief when new content appears, the emptiness when you've checked everything but still feel unsatisfied, the compulsion to fill every silent moment with noise, the need to document experiences rather than simply living them. That's not connection, that's not convenience, that's dependency. That's behavioral manipulation working exactly as intended. We carry our cages in our pockets, polish them lovingly, upgrade them annually, and defend them against criticism. We pay premium prices for newer, more effective restraints. We stand in line for the privilege of being more efficiently controlled. The chains are invisible, but the weight is real. The walls are unseen, but the confinement is absolute. The captivity is voluntary but no less complete. You participate in your own deception. We all do. Not questioning is comfortable. Acceptance is easy. Distraction is soothing. Conformity is rewarded. Obedience is praised. Cynicism is mistaken for wisdom. Truth demands response. Truth requires change. Truth eliminates excuses. Truth confers responsibility. Truth isolates you from those still sleeping, like a dreamer who senses the morning light but burrows deeper into blankets. We resist waking. We choose the familiar darkness over the demanding day. We prefer the known discomfort to the uncertain liberation. We've been taught to fear the wrong things. We fear missing out more than we fear missing our lives. We fear others' judgment more than we fear our own regret. We fear standing out more than we fear fading away. We fear failure more than we fear not trying. We fear uncertainty more than we fear guaranteed mediocrity. This spiritual and intellectual sleep isn't natural. It isn't the default state of human consciousness. It's induced, maintained, protected by systems that profit from your unconsciousness. Enforced by cultures that punish awakening. Remember when you were young, when questions came naturally, when "because I said so" wasn't good enough, when your curiosity was insatiable, when your imagination was boundless, when your sense of justice was uncorrupted? What happened to that person? They didn't disappear. They were systematically dismantled through education that rewards compliance over curiosity, entertainment that promotes passivity over engagement, work that values productivity over purpose, and social structures that prioritize conformity over authenticity. You weren't born asleep. You were lulled into it. Gradually, deliberately, effectively, year by year, choice by choice, compromise by compromise, until the dream became more familiar than reality. And now the dream feels more real than reality. The artificial feels more natural than nature. The trivial feels more significant than the profound. The urgent crowds out the important. The loudest voices drown out the truest ones. You might be thinking, this is exaggerated, things aren't that bad. This is just how modern life works. That's the voice of the programming. That's the defense mechanism protecting the illusion. That's the resistance that keeps the chains in place. Because if you acknowledged how much has been taken from you, how much potential remains untapped, how many hours have been wasted, how many genuine connections have been replaced with simulations, how many original thoughts have been supplanted by implanted opinions, you would have to do something about it. And doing something is much harder than remaining asleep. Action requires energy, change demands courage, awakening brings responsibility. But something is happening beneath the surface, in the margins, away from screens and headlines. People are remembering what it feels like to be truly alive. The first signal is discomfort, a nagging sense that something essential is missing. The second is anger, at the time wasted, at the manipulation revealed, at the potential squandered. The third is clarity, seeing the mechanisms of control that once seemed invisible, recognizing the patterns of manipulation that once seemed normal. There was a time when humans experienced life directly, when conversation happened face to face, when entertainment was created, not just consumed, when knowledge was pursued, not simply absorbed, when community meant physical presence, when nature was home, not a destination, when existence wasn't mediated through corporations and algorithms. That world still exists. It's just been buried under layers of mediation and distraction and acceleration. It remains accessible to anyone willing to dig through those layers. When one person breaks free from the illusion, they create a fracture in the system. When they speak truth, they create resonance that others feel. When they live authentically, they demonstrate what's possible. When they question openly, they give others permission to doubt. One awakened human becomes a threat to the entire architecture of deception. The awakening isn't comfortable. It's not supposed to be. Birth never is. Transformation requires dissolution. Growth demands disruption. Freedom necessitates confrontation. The pain you feel when awakening isn't damage. It's the sensation of your spirit stretching beyond the confines that once contained it. Breaking the spell. Now you face a choice. You can dismiss what you've heard and return to the programmed dream. You can acknowledge it intellectually, but change nothing, or you can act, knowing that action changes everything. Here's what breaking free looks like. First, create distance. Physically separate yourself from the mechanisms of distraction. Turn devices off completely. Delete apps that harvest attention. Create sacred spaces where nothing can interrupt your thoughts. Practice sustained silence. Relearn how to be alone with yourself. Second, reclaim your attention. It's the most valuable resource you possess. Guard it ferociously. Question what deserves it. Notice when it's being manipulated. Observe how it's directed away from what matters most. Train yourself to focus deeply again. Rebuild your capacity for sustained thought. Third, seek direct experience. Feel sunlight without documenting it. Have conversations without summarizing them for others. Create without seeking validation. Learn without needing credentials. Help without requiring recognition. Experience joy without sharing it. Cultivate private victories. Fourth, find your people. Not online approximations, but flesh and blood humans committed to authentic living. Not thousands of connections, but a handful of relationships with depth and substance. Their existence will reinforce your own. Their courage will strengthen yours. Their clarity will enhance your vision. You were born for more than consumption. You were designed for creation, connection, and meaning. You were made for more than scrolling, working, buying, and sleeping. The systems that profit from your distraction are powerful, but they're not stronger than your capacity for awakening. The programming is sophisticated, but it's not more intelligent than your innate wisdom. The cage is elaborate, but it cannot contain a mind that refuses imprisonment. Even the most elaborate deception cannot withstand the simple power of a person who decides to see clearly. Even the most persuasive lie cannot survive in the presence of a truth fully lived. Even the greatest illusion falters when faced with a single human who chooses, deliberately, daily, to be awake. The path beyond deception isn't easy. It isn't comfortable. It requires constant vigilance and renewal. The forces of distraction are persistent. The pull of sleep is powerful. The allure of conformity is strong. But on the other side of that struggle lies the life you were meant to live, the connections you were meant to forge, the contributions you were meant to make, the joy you were meant to experience, the purpose you were meant to fulfill. The great deception thrives on your compliance. Your awakening begins with a single defiant no. What will you choose? The question isn't whether you can afford to wake up, it's whether you can afford not to.